Okay. All right. So here's what we're trying to accomplish here is, for those of you who don't know how the Silvestri family got to Lexington. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Louise knows more about it than probably all of us together. So here's what I understand: is that your father,
You art in heaven.
Harry Silvestri, Harry grew up in Springfield, Ohio. Is that right? Okay.
Right.
Now, Harry's father was Anthony Silvestri, and Anthony Silvestri was actually born Marion Silvestri. And he actually he grew up in Sicily area,
Right.
Palermo, Italy.
Palermo.
Okay, so Palermo, Italy is down there in the boot, below the boot of Italy. There's this other little spot there. There's a boot that's sort of like kicking this little island. That's Sicily. And the capital of Palermo, the capital of Sicily, is called Palermo.
Palermo, right.
And that was
That's
Marion.
where they came from, yeah.
So when did Marion actually then move to the United States?
I don't really know the exact year that he moved in here to the United States. But they came over on one of those boats that were bringing them to Ellis Island.
Okay. So
That's where they came into
New York
Ellis
City.
Island.
Yeah.
And then about that same time, the Gatilla family came over
Okay.
to Ellis Island also.
All right.
Okay, so then they all seemed to migrate, that group, in Ohio. A lot of the Italians that came over at that time went to New York and all these
Yeah.
other places.
Okay.
They were all Ohioans, and I don't know if it was because they had known somebody there previously, before they ever came
Yeah.
down. But
This in your lap.
when he married Rose, my grandfather in Ohio, Springfield, he married Rose Otto. And when he married her, then they came over together.
Okay.
He was a baker over there.
Okay.
He was a baker.
So they're all now living in Springfield, Ohio.
They're living in
Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
And then what happened, what I understand, is that Marcelino's grocery store was already here.
No.
Okay. So Marcelino's, when did Marcelino's start? Like 1900 in Lexington?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
then Daniel Gatilla, who was Uncle Dan, was the Gatilla. He came over and he brought Grandma. No. Well, her name wasn't Marcelino. Her name was Gatilla.
Okay.
That was his sister.
Okay.
They came over and she was like 16, 17, something like that.
And this is in like downtown Lexington. When they first moved to Lexington, they were on South Broadway.
Yeah, that part.
They were on South Broadway.
Yeah. The rest
and
of
they
them
opened
went
up
to
a little
Springfield.
grocery store.
Yeah, and then the rest of them went to Springfield.
Okay.
Okay. Then when they decided, what they did is they chose the person that the man or the woman was going to marry.
I see.
They were given to each other.
Okay.
So my grandfather was married right after he
Your
got
grandfather, Marion, yeah.
married.
Uh-huh.
He got married. He had a wife after he got here. He married another young lady. Her name was Josephine.
Okay.
And Josephine got pregnant and was going to have a baby. And that was Uncle Marion, his son that nobody hardly ever knew. They called him Marion Marcelino, and he was Grandpa's, but he wasn't my grandma's. He wasn't No-No's son at all. No. And so when she got pregnant, was going to have a baby, she had this baby, and by the time the baby was 2 years old, she died.
Okay.
So there he was left, a bachelor again, in here in Lexington, and he had Marion, and so he needed another wife.
Ah, okay.
So he went to Springfield to the Gatillas, and that's where he met Grandma,
Oh, I see.
Mary Marcelino.
Okay.
And Mary Gatilla is who she was. Anyway, so he asked for her hand, my Uncle Dan, because he was the only one here then. Then he brought the rest of the family over
Back to
again.
Lexington.
Uncle
Yeah.
Dan did,
Okay.
yeah.
Now,
So that's how we're connected with the Gatillas.
okay.
So the Gatillas and then the Silvestris intermarried all the rest of the time through there. They married each Uncle Dan married a Bessie Silvestri in Springfield.
Okay.
And we didn't know anything about these people, but they all lived around us. And then Grandma got pregnant, and she had Grandma, my mother,
Oh, okay.
Anna.
Yeah.
She had Anna. So Anna and Marianne were stepbrother and sister.
Okay.
Half brother and sister. Half brother, yeah.
Yeah.
Half. And so they were, they lived here. Then Mother went back to Springfield to visit. And that's when she met Dad, your
Yeah,
dad,
Harry.
Harry.
Huh?
And they got married.
Okay.
They
In
had
Springfield.
in Springfield. They had one of the biggest weddings that was ever in Springfield.
Huh. Yeah.
It was at the Memorial Hall. It was over 200 people, and I guess they were all Italians. I don't know who they were. But they had music and a cake that served 200 people.
Yeah.
And by the way, I found the information on all that.
Oh, good.
Too.
Good.
It's all about their wedding.
Okay.
They called her this beautiful Italian girl.
Yeah.
So anyway, then they married, and then Daddy's father and mother, Harry,
Yeah.
owned a duplex. And they lived on one side, and he had two sisters, but they lived in Columbus and in Dayton
Okay.
at the time. So they said to him, Daddy will give you the other side of the house to live in with Anna, and that way something happens, you got to take care of it.
Okay,
So
yeah.
he was in charge of them, but they were really up in age then. Back then you couldn't tell. People when they got my age, they looked like, well, like my age was getting. Anyway, and so they lived right next door to them, and then. Marion Silvestri got very ill and died.
Ah.
And Rose still lived next door to us. But
Okay.
then she had a stroke. And then she moved in with us on our side.
In Ohio.
In Ohio.
In Ohio.
In our side.
Okay.
And we rented out the other side.
Okay.
So that they would have an income. She
Yeah.
would still have an income because they didn't have Social Security.
I see.
So, anyway, then from there, let's see, where do I go? There were a lot of brothers and sisters of the Silvestris living behind us in our house in Springfield, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
We called it the alley. It was a thoroughfare right behind us. And they had 6 children. And they were all Silvestris. And they intermarried with Aunt Mary and Aunt Virginia. And Aunt Virginia, though she met somebody else and married a Camilla.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the other 2 in that family. That was Daddy, Mary, and Virginia. And then Mary and Virginia moved away. Mary lived in Columbus, and Virginia lived in Belle Fountain, Ohio.
Okay.
And
When did Aunt Mary move to Springfield?
No, Aunt Mary, not till later, much later.
When she married Frank?
After she was married to Frank, yeah, and they lost their business, and then they came there and lived with us for a while.
Well, I have something to ask you. What about the, I can't remember the Italian name Grandpa always called him by. Was it, I want to say,
Fudicelli?
is he the crazy one?
Yeah,
The one that
Fudicelli.
went to Africa
Yeah,
and
Fudicelli.
killed the warrior and ate his heart?
Yeah, Fudicelli. Fudicelli. His name was Stali. Fudicelli. He was a crazy brother to my grandfather that lived next door to us, Marion. He was his brother. But he lived in Springfield, but he didn't live with any of us because he was way out there.
He was wild. Wild man.
he lived in a garage in the back of a house that was colored in the colored neighborhood, which was about a half a mile up the road from us. And he lived there. Well, when he was younger, before he got to that point, he decided he wanted to go to Africa.
Huh.
And so he went to Africa, and while he was over there, he killed Africans. I mean, he wore a dagger
Wow. Yeah.
in his side. He was wild looking, really.
How about that? Yeah.
And he came back to Springfield. When
Why was he killing them? What was his?
he wasn't
Just.
he wasn't really.
Bizarre character.
We don't really know.
There,
the
we don't know
story.
what the.
No, we don't know what happened, but
Grandpa told was that a tribe were chasing him, and he was hopelessly outnumbered. And he knew if they caught him, they'd kill him. So he grabbed the closest one to him and killed him and cut his heart out and held it up in front of all the tribe. And
Something
Yeah.
out of a
He was-
movie or a
yeah.
show
Yeah.
I've been watching.
it
Wow.
could have been a movie. It could have really.
Wow.
Yeah, see, and Daddy had a brother too, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Dad had a brother named Tony. They had the two. There was Tony and Mary and Virginia and Daddy. Well, Tony. Let me get back to what happened when Futastali came back. Well, after he came back, he got arrested. When he got off the train, they arrested him.
Uh-huh.
Now I don't know if at that time back then if they knew what he'd done, but anyway, he got arrested and put in jail. And while he was in jail,
He was only licensed to kill one of them, and he killed more.
yeah, and while he was
probably
in
didn't get
jail,
arrested for
he
that.
asked for, I think he had a cigarette or a cigar or whatever, and he asked for matches. And so he put the match and put it in water and drank it and made himself sick. And they took him out of there and thought he was going to die.
Wow.
Yeah, from then on he was bonko.
I'll be darned. How about that?
So that's when he was living up the street. Nobody would live with him, see?
Yeah.
And
Well, he escaped though, didn't he? I mean, when they took him to the hospital or wherever they took him,
no, they let him go. They let him go because he was a nut and they didn't want to pay for it, I guess.
So now,
But anyway.
getting back to didn't you and Joe had to come? My father didn't he have to come to Lexington because there was somebody sick here?
That was Grandpa Marcelino that was sick.
Grandpa
he was dying
Marcelino.
of cancer.
So pick up from the story there. Tell
Right
us-
there.
yeah.
Okay. So then when well, of course we were very young then. Joe was 2 years older than I.
Uh-huh.
He'd be 90 if he was here now.
Yeah.
But anyway, they called and said Uncle Marion was working the store, but Uncle Marion was in another business. He was in car business.
Oh, okay.
And he said, I can't do this. I've got to get out of here. So, Harry, you come and take the store. Because Grandpa isn't going to make it. Daddy's not going to make it.
Okay.
So what happened is they said, Daddy couldn't just pick up and go immediately. So they sent Joe.
Okay.
Joe came in on a train and...
What was he, about 12?
Yes.
No, he was 16. He was 16.
16.
He didn't get to graduate. That was his last year, and he didn't get to graduate. He got his
In high school.
GED later, yeah. So, what's the matter?
He just wants
Yeah,
everything.
tired.
Yeah.
So anyway, then Joe came first, and then after Joe came, we didn't have a phone at home, but Joe called neighbors and said, "Get Dad on the phone. I got to talk to him." He said, "I can't do this by myself. 16, and they didn't even know how old he was running a business."
Uh-huh.
And so Daddy said, "Well, I've got to go." So he drove and he left. I was still in school.
Okay.
So Mother and I stayed in Springfield. And then we waited for me to get out of the 8th grade, which is where I was.
Oh, okay.
And then Daddy came back and got Mom and I and some of our furniture and left the rest of it there. And among the things we left, which
Oh, you're
killed
loving this. You're going to love this one.
was a player piano.
Oh, wow.
We had over 100 rolls. I mean, it was just packed with them. And you could sit down and play your music
And Mom,
forever.
what
And that
else
was a
did you
wedding
all
present
leave?
from Grandpa Marcelino
Is that
for
right?
their wedding.
Wow.
What else did you all leave under the floorboards in the house?
Yeah, oh yeah, well then after
Money.
we left, Daddy had been hiding money in that house under the floorboards.
Oh, my
They looked
Lord.
like hardwood, but when you stepped on it, it would bounce up. Well, Daddy used to
Where's
hide
the
money
house?
under there.
He's gone.
He sang in beer parlors. Daddy did at night.
I didn't know that.
I mean, that,
Wow.
yeah. My grandfather
Grandpa.
sang.
Well,
Yeah,
he had a
sang
voice.
Tenor.
Really?
He was a tenor.
Yeah.
Beautiful
I didn't
tenor.
realize he made money doing that.
Yeah, he
Wow.
did. And he would go from place to place.
What'd you call that? What kind of a place?
Bear parlor?
A beer parlor.
Beer parlor.
parlor.
Okay.
Yeah, beer parlor.
A beer
It's like a
parlor.
bear
Yeah, a beer
A
parlor.
little thing, Louise.
Yeah.
Our father Joe, his name was also
Marion.
Marion.
Yeah.
Well, and he was baptized Marion Joseph, and he dropped the Marion because he said it sounds sissy, and he picked up Joseph, and he kept it. So we switched from Marion to Joseph when he was about 17.
Amazing.
17, he switched it. Of course, he noticed she didn't have any rings on, he said. And she said to him, she said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. She said, you got a beautiful wife and a baby girl. And he said, I looked at her and he said, she said, that beautiful girl over there, your wife. And he said, that's my sister. And her baby. Rosalie was about 3, I guess, at that time.
Wow.
Because he'd been gone for a while. He'd been in the service. So so she said, oh, well, she going too? And he said, yeah, she'll go too.
Yeah,
but I had
yeah.
been teaching his friends how to dance.
Okay. Yeah.
He'd bring them to the house and we were playing the Victrola and teaching them how to dance because they knew how to two-step and that was it.
Yeah.
And I loved to dance back then.
Together all the time.
So anyway, after we did that, Joe came back and he said he would take me to the dance. But he said, you know, you can't, this is a place they drink. You're not allowed to drink and you're underage. So you're going to drink Coca-Colas and sit there. And I said, well, do I get to dance? And he said, yeah, you'll get to dance. So Frances and I sat next to each other. She felt secure because she knew I was with him.
Okay. And this is at Joyland.
Joyland
Yeah,
Park.
uh-huh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Joyland Park. So that is the way that all began. And then from then on, you know, he didn't date her but about a year and a half or 2, and he asked her to get married.
Okay. Yeah.
And so she did. And then
They lived at your house.
huh?
They lived at your house when they got married.
No. Till they got married?
No, after they got married.
Oh, after they got married, yeah. Well, not immediately. No, they lived on North Broadway, across from Millward's funeral home. You know where Millward sits? Okay. There's 2 great buildings that have 3 stories on this
Yeah,
side, and they have this outdoor thing where you climb around and get up there. You know.
Okay.
Well, they were living in there, and then Frances got pregnant with David. And after they lived there, but they were 3rd floor. It was tough, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Huh. So
And
that's where it all started then. It was on the right there on Broadway then,
On
as far as where
Broadway.
their first home was.
Yeah.
Huh.
Then after they lived up there, David was going, I guess, oh, you know, David was a big boy. Where is he? Anyway, they said, you know, they were going to have to move. And so they came to live with me for a while because Johnny had come home to my husband, and we divorced in the meantime because he was another nut.
Yeah.
So we divorced, and Joe and Frances moved in with me and stayed there. I guess we stayed together for about a year. And I found the duplex on Carolyn Drive.
Okay.
And I called Joe and I said, Joe, what do you think about us buying a duplex together?
Oh, okay.
So that's where the duplex came in.
Is that where Danny was born? Oh, was Danny when
Danny, yeah, Danny was born there.
at the duplex then?
Yeah, at the
Okay.
duplex.
You were
yeah.
actually born there? Like,
Well,
I mean, that's where he was. That's where he was
That's when he
living when
came
he
home
was
from the
born.
hospital.
So
Yeah.
Daddy and Dustin, both their first house was the same place?
Me too. Oh, how cool.
That is crazy.
What's that?
yeah.
Because that's where my parents lived when Dustin and Carol were.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
I
Yeah,
remember
well,
a little bit of
Well, I
Well,
have some
discovery there.
babies there.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
about
I think
that?
it was the same
I
size.
was conceived in Bourbon Street.
17 on Carolyn Drive.
I know that's our code
Bourbon
for our garage
Street.
door.
New Orleans, yeah.
Lived on both sides.
really, New Orleans?
Yeah, right? I was conceived in Bourbon Street. A hotel with green shag carpet.
I didn't.
Who gets to know that about themselves?
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of funny that you say that because
That explains a lot.
you don't get to hear those stories too often. But my mom said that, okay, this is like 1960, spring at Keeneland. She'd gone out there with her girlfriends, and apparently she came home looking really good, she said. My dad was feeling a little amorous. But it's sort of funny to hear my mom describe how she was looking really good when she came home from Keeneland. She was sort of like grabbing her hips like I was looking really good. There I came in February the following.
There you were, yeah.
Tammy remembers that.
Yeah.
Though. It's like because one of those Francisisms is like, oh boy,
Yeah.
here we go.
And they
Thinking about that.
kept batting the
Well, you
children.
were born February the 2nd.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about that story and I thought, Keeneland must have gone late that year.
It was May, right? April. It sometimes starts in April. It's either
Yeah.
April or May.
No, it's always April and then it
April.
ends. It ends before Derby. The week
Yeah,
before
the Derby.
And Derby is the first week of
May. April?
Well,
So
April,
it
May,
just-
June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. Yeah, that does seem a little bit late, doesn't it? Okay, well, maybe that's.
Well, she could have been late.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, she could have been late.
She was very slender back
Yeah.
then. She never did carry any weight with her, but she always looked like $1 million when she's dressed
That
up.
does sound, actually, that is 9 months. That is 9 months.
Kenny, Lucy, what's that do to you guys?
You were born with platinum blonde hair.
I have the picture.
You
Yeah.
gave your dad all kinds of it because every one of the boys had coal black
Black
hair.
hair.
But you.
You,
Yeah.
the last one.
Uh-huh, Francis.
Yeah.
What color's the milkman's hair?
Yeah. That was quite the head of hair. Blonde. Okay, so
Your battery's
so the Silvestri family now has Marcelinos. Then let's see, Grandpa passes away in 1978. 1977.
Yeah.
Okay, but just prior to that, you all may now remember that there was this little fruit market in fruit market that was in front of where the library is now. The library used to be the Phoenix Hotel.
Yeah.
Phoenix Hotel
Yeah.
was next door to what used to be McCroy's 5 and 10.
Yeah. And that's where
Mark
Grandpa
was
was.
actually the manager there.
Yeah.
And we had these two big stands about the size of this table, and when I was like 10 years old, I would either walk or ride or hitchhike downtown, and I would meet up with my grandfather, and we would fill up this big cart. Well, first of all, we pushed the carts out there, and we went down the basement, and we would we had these stands where we sold just, fruits and vegetables and all that kind of thing. And that was, 1969, 1970. And one of the funny things about this, we had these, so we're down there selling the fruit stand, and one time this guy comes riding by on his bicycle, grabs an apple, and Mike is working down at the Rebecca Ruth candy store.
With me.
And Mike, sees the guy stealing an apple from Grandpa, and little did he know we had the downtown mafia going. So Mike jumps out in front of him with this karate move kind of thing, and stops the guy cold, grabs the apple, takes a couple steps, and sort of like throws it up the street. And I think Grandpa like catches it, like a second baseman from what I remember. and this kid's like, what is going on here?
Don't you know?
Connected somehow.
I mean, this whole thing all happened just like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Somehow he came and he was the good guy. Tingly Tongly was the bad
No,
guy.
no, you got it the other.
The other way, the other way,
was the bad guy.
the other way. And of course, you wanted the good one to win, and you run into your.
his pockets.
So he was giant.
Remember that? He was
Yes.
a giant, and he
Yes.
would scoop us up,
Nothing.
put him in his
Pocket and take him everywhere with
take
him.
us. He would step over houses, and he would take us and rescue us all the
So I
time.
didn't, I didn't
Oh,
even
we all
do
piled
that.
up in the bed with Grandpa on Sunday morning and listened to the tales.
Yeah, and
Wow.
It was the greatest
Aunt Mary was
storyteller.
better about telling them too than Aunt
Well,
Virginia.
this guy never had
Aunt Virginia had
it.
I'm
7
pretty sure that
children,
he made it.
and I guess she got worn out telling stories. But Aunt Mary just had 2, and so Aunt Mary used to come to visit us, and then we would sit with her, and she would tell us all these stories. So we thought they were really something people that happened to.
Yeah,
It
right.
happened to these
Sure.
people. As you grow up, then you begin to say, I wonder where that came from. I wonder where they are now. What happened to those people?
Right. What happened to them?
What happened
Those
to them?
steps is
Yeah.
quite peeped around
They
the
might have
corner,
really
and I
been about
swear,
real people,
He
though.
had
I
me
mean,
convinced that I
that
saw
changed
Sarah's
I'm
picture
wondering if
going up the chimney.
How
And
much?
you couldn't have
Italian,
told me any different.
if they used to,
Isn't that
their
something?
He was going
when they
up
were
that
old,
chimney.
you know,
Just missed it.
if their
Yeah.
parents told them these stories,
Yeah,
but
he
Yeah.
woke me up to the
Uh,
building.
in a different vein, maybe, you
Well,
know.
they probably changed their memories, just like when my dad was telling him to us, and he couldn't remember. He would just insert his own.
Who
life
were they?
experience. Yeah, so it's probably
No,
the stories
no,
of
no.
like the life stories
heard of
and the
it.
lessons of all
No.
of the wisdom of all of these Italians
Yeah,
from
you
all
change,
over the
it
years.
changes.
Based,
Well,
with the,
do you know, it's funny, but of all the children that there were in Ohio, from all of these sisters and all of them, and Joe and I, even Uncle Joe was not nosy like I was. But when the Italian women got together, they all would go into a room and sit and talk like the living room. And I would go in there and sit down too, because I listened to my grandparents talk all the time, and I knew if I had to talk to them, I had to speak Italian. So that's where I picked up my Italian. And then Joe and I picked up all the stories in Italian that we used to tell. He and I could say them. But the Camella kids didn't know how to speak Italian. The Flesh kids didn't know how to speak Italian. That's Aunt Mary's side. And we were the only ones.
I didn't know that you guys even spoke Italian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Grandpa was fluent.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he would have been maybe a better if he lived in Italy. I would consider that if he were in Italy, he would have sounded a little the local yokel
yeah,
or a little backwoods or
Yeah.
something, because you all it got a little watered down because you're mixing English.
That's right. You start to get slang mixed in it. You get slang in it. I remember the first time I heard my grandma get mad, she said, this is a bad word, she said, you little butana, you. And I thought, oh. So I went over and I said, Grandma called me a butana. That's a son of a bitch. And I thought I'd really picked up a new one.
That was Grandpa's mother.
Grandpa's mother.
No.
Oh, no, Grandpa's mother.
No.
Grandpa would come up with other sayings.
Huh?
Shirley greasing across the street, they call it brashati,
Bishotti.
with pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bishotti.
What's a bashati?
Bashati, wet pants.
Wet pants, pee-pee. She smelled of it.
Well, one of the
I'm
other
learning
things,
all kinds of very valuable Italian here. I'm gonna.
Grandpa used to always sing this one song that Danny seems to have down. Et tu vas venissimo.
Yeah, he did.
What does that mean?
Do you know, I really never translated that one. I don't know. When I was going to Italy the first time, I went to the library and I got the CDs and all this stuff. Because I don't speak to anybody anymore. Mom and Daddy never spoke to
Can you
each
translate
other.
those words though?
No, I can't. I don't know what they were. It's a story. I know it's a story.
Yeah.
And it's and Peter, maybe you, and you know,
Probably to
I don't know. I'm just trying to go from my Latin experience.
Yeah.
And you know.
He didn't sing that one around me very much.
Oh my gosh! Every time he got in the car, was driving somewhere,
Yeah.
he'd start singing, and Grandma would say, "Shut up, Harry."
Yeah.
Oh, you got that wrong. It was, oh, shut up, Harry. She always did smack him. Oh, shut up, Harry.
Well, he loved to
Sometimes she'd just
sing.
look out her right window and say, "Shut up, Harry."
He liked those Sole Mio and all of the old
Oh
Italian
yeah,
songs.
he loved those songs.
And with me, I always sang all the
Back when we had that
fraternity
piano, and my
Like,
dad played piano too.
Beautiful Dreamer.
And they would all, the
and
Italians
I
I
Got a
told
Girl
you lived
Just Like
behind
the Girl
us, the
that
Sylvester
married dear
girl,
old
they all
dad.
had good
You know,
voices.
those
They would all
jazz
come
songs
over
he would sing.
and
Oh,
play
yeah.
the
That's
piano
right.
and
The
sing.
bright, the
And Mother would walk in the kitchen. She didn't like to hear that. My mother didn't like to hear it. So when they started dying off, nobody spoke
Oh,
it
he
anymore.
sure did.
He had a
Girl
you
of my
lose it.
dreams
Yeah.
is the sweetest
You don't
girl.
use it, you lose it.
That's
of
right.
all
You've
the
got to
girls
speak
I
it.
know.
It's like when I left school, I was
Each
drawn
sweet
in
caress.
French because I wanted to
Sweet
speak
caress.
French.
Like a
Well, I
rainbow veil.
couldn't really
Like
speak
a
it.
rainbow, what?
I couldn't tell
Like a
you
rainbow
boo now.
veil.
Like a rainbow veil.
I said, who would I talk to?
Like a rainbow veil.
Je m'appelle.
Falling this afternoon. The blue in her eyes.
That's about it. That's all I
Gold
got.
in her hair.
Yeah, that's
Land of the western skies. Let the girl of my dreams is the western screen. I don't know.
No, that's
The
wrong.
girl of my dreams is the only girl. She's the sweetheart
Of Sigma Chi.
That's it. Yeah.
Huh.
No,
Yeah,
I mean, he
that was
didn't
one of
make
his
that up.
songs.
Oh no!
Yeah, that was an old
That's
song.
Sigma Chi or
Back then.
Okay.
Oh, and there's that sad one. Last night the stars were all aglow.
Oh yes.
He sang that
Last
one.
he
night
was a good singer.
He wasn't.
He was. He loved to sing.
my dream is
Grandma
on
hated it.
to live no more.
And then there was that scratch and scratch. And
held her hand, I called her dear.
yeah.
My dear, and
Remember
then
that?
the
Oh, yeah.
stars
Yeah.
grew dim and
I heard all
pale.
that.
Yeah.
The moon grew pale,
you can't
my
listen
heart
to
grew
y'all.
cold. And then he go way up there. My dream is on to live no more.
You haven't told me
Last
you've done
night
anything with
was
me
the
because that's
end
the last.
of the world.
I guess I'm
Yeah.
It goes way up there.
Yeah,
So did you learn
had
that
a
song
piano.
from Grandpa?
Yeah.
Really?
And do you
and
remember
being
Casey?
boring if I
Casey was waltzing
I-
the silver. Casey was waltzing.
Scratch and scratch.
Oh, yeah. I'm a scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch till my ribs are sore. Well, I got bugs by the score, and every day there's more. Well, there's a mama bug and a papa bug, and bugs that are thin and fat. There's tall ones and small ones, and I take them off like that. Oh, those bugs, how they do pester me, yeah. They make me mad, oh so mad that I would cuss. Well, someday I'll wash with soap, and I know I'll get their goat, and they won't crawl over me anymore. I could not remember that, and the other day I had to write
You know
those
why?
down.
It's written down right there.
Yeah.
It's written down.
How about that?
Isn't that something?
That is.
Yeah.
Good, Danny.
I think it's the
I hadn't
things
done
that he
that
said
forever.
that impressed you, that stuck in your head.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
wrote it
Yeah.
down the other day, couldn't remember it, and first time I've done this
I
forever.
feel like that's meant for the back in the day when there were bugs
Yeah.
that get on people more often.
I
What's
think
the origin of that
Daddy
song?
You sang that song the other day. Or it was like it was recently, like within
Not
the
really.
past year. 'Cause I
No.
remember.
You mean the
singing
scratch
it.
and scratch?
Yes.
Yeah,
See, I never
we
heard
were-
that song.
We were having cooking breakfast or something, I think.
Amazing.
I have an itchy elbow. Always talking about scratchings making me scratch.
Mom, I'm gonna head
I
out.
think we were talking about
And where he came
I'm
up
going
with that,
too,
who
honey.
Well,
knows?
you're not going anywhere without Michael. He's on
No,
the phone.
no, I got to.
And I would like to hear
on the
Vicky
pillow at
sometime
home.
talk about
Everybody.